up, Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and I'm back with another episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. I'm joined by your favorite beat reporter, Chris Fedor. What's going on, Chris? How was your weekend?
Ethan, I have cable. I have internet. I feel like I'm in 2024 again instead of the Stone Age. It's wonderful.
I could not imagine having to deal with what you had to go through this last couple weeks, last week, especially with the storm, not having power, then not having internet, having the tree situation. Man, you and it. I mean, now it wasn't a holiday thing. I know you have a track record for having bad things happen around the holidays, but I'm glad that you have internet back. Glad to see your face. And we're going to get into some things on this podcast that circulate around this past weekend, right? The Olympics finished up this past weekend. The Paralympics are going to be happening in a couple of days. But the Olympics, as we know them, the Olympics, when it comes to the men's and women's basketball teams being able to secure gold, the women's team doing it for their 8th straight time, and the men's the Avengers, as LeBron James claimed them to be. Obviously, they had the Dream Team, the Redeem Team, and now the Avengers has now finished up, and now they have their own championship or own gold medal as their own thing. Chris, Stephen Curry, dude, last couple of minutes, 4 consecutive three-pointers, four three-pointers in 2 minutes and 11 seconds. It was a spectacle. Have you seen... what were your emotions when you saw that? I was in a local restaurant, local bar watching the game, and the entire place erupted. What were your emotions going through your mind having that happen?
Man, it was unbelievable. Shouldn't be surprised because it's Steph. But that last one that he hit that led to him going night-night, putting the entire country to sleep at that point, it was a ridiculous shot. The degree of difficulty on that, given the stakes, given the magnitude of the moment, incredibly high. And he made it look easy. He made it look Steffortless, as they like to say. It was just unbelievable. And you could tell that he wasn't afraid of the moment, that he had been in big-time moments like that before. He had come through in big-time moments like that before. And I had to watch it on my phone. I didn't have internet. I didn't have cable at the time. So I turned the hotspot to one of my phones. I turned that on. And then I watched it on my Peacock app on my little Android. And at one point when I was watching it, my wife was sitting next to me on the couch, and she turned over to her left. And she's like, I can't even read what the score is. How are you watching this on your phone right now? I said, I don't think you understand. Like, I have to watch this. I need to watch. This is the gold medal game. This is United States against France again. The history between the two sides, incredible. The fact that Wemby is playing as well as he is at this point, incredible. LeBron doing what he does, KD hitting big shots, Steph hitting big shots. And that's a big thing. Those three guys were so critical to this gold medal, Ethan, and they're done. They're not coming back for another Olympics. So for Steph to prepare for like the last 2 years, basically, to be part of this Olympic team, this is his first Olympic appearance. It's the gold medal game. He didn't play very well leading up to the last couple of games. And for him to have back-to-back games like he did, with the pressure so high, with the stakes so high, with everything on the line, when Team USA absolutely needed it. I mean, KD was deferring to Steph. LeBron was deferring to Steph, and rightfully so, because he was ready for that moment. He wanted that moment, and he delivered when he needed it the most. It was awesome to watch. And I think one of the things that I loved seeing, Ethan, is, here in Cleveland, it's been such an interesting relationship with Steph. While he was at Davidson in college, NCAA tournament, he was a shining star. He was so much fun to watch. Even early in his career, he was one of the guys that I gravitated toward personally, people that I know gravitated toward personally, just because of his style of game. And because it's not like some 6'9", 7-foot dude that you don't feel like you can go out in the driveway and duplicate. You know what I mean? Like the stuff that Steph was doing, it's really not repeatable because he does it at a higher level than anybody else. He might be the greatest point guard of all time. He is the greatest shooter of all time. But he's 6'3" and he doesn't have incredible athleticism, and he didn't win the genetic lottery per se. So you felt like you could go to a gym or you could go to your driveway and you could do Steph like shots. Not to his level, obviously, but you can't do LeBron stuff because you're not 6'9", 285. So there were a lot of people close to me that I grew up with that were really big fans of Steph. And then all of a sudden, the Golden State Warriors become the rival for the Cavs. Everybody hates him, and rightfully so. If you're a Cavs fan, you can't root for Steph Curry. You can't root for the Warriors. You can't appreciate their greatness as much. The thing that I loved seeing is that the hatred that people in Cleveland and around the basketball universe, the hatred that they had for Steph, in part because they were the dynastic Golden State Warriors and they were the easy team to hate for 4 straight years. Like everybody loves Steph, and they were able to appreciate it on a different kind of level. There was no rooting against KD. There was no rooting against Steph. It was all for Team USA. And just seeing social media explode when Steph went on that late game flurry and put the entire country of France to sleep was awesome to watch. And you cannot take for granted the fact that you got to watch 3 of the top 15 players currently in the game on the same side. I don't know the next time, or if there's going to be a next time, Ethan, that we have 3 of the top 15 players all on the Team USA side for another Olympic Games.
Chris, you talked about that last little shot that Steph hit over 2 defenders with KD and LeBron James sitting right next to him with their hands up, kind of calling for the ball. And even Bam Adebayo, who was on the bench at this point, I believe, was like, after the game, he said, you see the shot go up and you're like, what the heck? And then you remember who's shooting it. And I'm like, I mean, it was magnificent. Dog. I cannot, I was mad at myself because I missed the Serbia game. I was busy doing some other stuff, but while the Serbia game was happening, but I was like, I am not missing the France USA game. Sat down and watched that, and I do not regret it one bit at all. And
I mean,
obviously,
is there anybody else, Ethan? Is there anybody else in the NBA that takes that shot that Steph did, and we don't sit there and say bad shot? What are you doing?
No.
I think he's the only one in that moment that can take that shot, and people are like, all right, that's a Steph shot.
We'll live with it. We'll live with it for sure. Yeah. I mean, that. What did they say? Said, laser beam pointed at the planet. Who do you want taking the last shot? I'm sorry. If you saying anybody else other than Wardell, Stephen Curry, you're absolutely out of your mind. Andre Iguodala, no disrespect to you, famous quote, but no, not a shot. That is the guy you want taking that shot. And Chris, I think you're absolutely right, because people in Cleveland didn't have the opportunity to cheer on Steph. People in LeBron James had to find a way to go up against Steph, somebody that he had become friends with earlier on in his career. Steve Kerr, who was the head coach of the Team USA team, was on the sideline being a fan, basically, and watching LeBron and Steph together, right? Obviously, this might be his last year coaching. Eric Spoelstra might be the next head coach. But on the other side of everything, you also had the guy that's going to run the team for the Cavs winning silver. Kenny Atkinson, one of the assistant coaches for the French team's basketball squad. Obviously, they didn't do what they hoped they would do, but obviously getting to be the host team and getting all the way to the gold medal match, that's not nothing to sneeze at, right? And Kenny Atkinson was able to implement some of his offensive tendencies, and you got to see them, obviously, also with some of the different players around the world. And I think it made Cavs fans more excited to see what he'll be able to implement in this Cavs offense based on what they got to see with the French team. What do you think about that, Chris?
Yeah, man, I think that's the great thing to me about this hire of Kenny Atkinson. And it's not just that he has French national team experience, which you can see it from a different lens. You can get a different viewpoint as an assistant as opposed to a head coach. You can see a different style of play because it's FIBA basketball as opposed to the NBA. And you ask yourself, is that going to translate? But every step that Kenny Atkinson has taken throughout the course of his career has made him a better coach, and it has led him to this point. Did everybody know that it was going to end up in Cleveland at this point? No, not at all. But, learning from Mike D'Antoni, learning from Coach Bud, learning from Ty Lue, learning from Steve Kerr. Like, he has gotten a master class from some of the most influential and well-respected coaches of the last 10 to 15 years in the NBA. Think about the way that Mike D'Antoni revolutionized the NBA. And then think about some of the things that Bud implemented that a lot of other coaches tried to follow. And if you think about the Bud coaching tree, that's pretty impressive. If you think about the Steve Kerr coaching tree, that's pretty impressive. Ty Lue getting that 1 year in Los Angeles, being around some brilliant basketball minds and seeing it a different kind of way, seeing success, seeing failure, seeing what works for one system and whether or not you have the personnel to operate something similar to that. That's only going to make you a better coach. So I like the fact that he has been a lot of different places around a lot of different coaches. And I thought the French national team coach, I thought he did a really good job. Like, there were times that he benched Batum in the second half, right? There were times throughout the course of the tournament that he went away from Wemby and Gobert. Then he went back to Gobert. Like, he just didn't care about any of the other nonsense. And, obviously it's harder to operate that kind of way in the NBA when it's a players league and it's not such a tournament set up the way that the Olympics is. But I just think, a coach that was willing to do all that kind of stuff and have buy-in from really, really important players from the French national team will do whatever role it takes to win a gold medal, right? If that means 15 points, that means 15 points. If it means 0 and play defense, whatever the case may be. So I do think he's going to benefit from this experience with the French national team, seeing a different style, seeing a different coach, getting that kind of experience. And it's just going to be, another part of the mental stuff that he has learned along the way and stuff that he may be able to implement depending on the personnel that he has moving forward with the Cavs.
You also talked about Ty Lue and Steve Kerr and obviously Kenny Atkinson being under those two guys. He had to face those two guys in the gold medal game. They were both on the bench for the Cavs, or for the Team USA. Obviously, Ty Lue, formerly with the Cavs, someone who knows LeBron James really well, knows how to work with his style. Obviously, Steve Kerr mentioned it being really easy to work with LeBron because he can do everything. He's mastered almost every aspect of the game, and it makes life a lot easier when you have guys that can just run an offense, right? Like, I know there was jokes made about during the Cavs season last year where Jay Bickerstaff was talking to a reporter, was like, yep, no play calls, just give him the ball and run. Like, and in some cases, when the Team USA, when you got LeBron, KD, and Steph Curry on the same court, sometimes you just got to let them go. Let them do their own thing. Don't got to like, I forget who said it. Draymond Green, who's on Steve Kerr's team, he said sometimes you got to say screw the rotations and just let them play ball. Let them do things when they're being successful. But, Chris, you also talked about a important point when you mentioned that this is probably the last time, if not definitely the last time, that KD, Steph, and LeBron James are going to be a part of Team USA and the Olympics. And obviously, we know the next one, 2028, will be held in Los Angeles. And obviously, you want to go back to back. Obviously, you want to bring a team back together that's going to be able to challenge and protect home court when it comes to being a host team. And there have been some controversy. There has been some discussion about who will be on the men's 2028 team. And there's some talk about the potential for guys like Donovan Mitchell, Jarrett Allen, and even Evan Mobley to make the roster.
Mm.
Chris, ESPN came out with a prediction list for the 2028 Olympic men's basketball roster on August 10th. The same day that they won the gold medal game, they were already looking ahead to 4 years later, right?
Uh,
Here are some of the guys that they said might not be back. Drew Holiday and Derek White, both of the Boston Celtics guys. Holiday will be 38, and then also Derek White will be 34. But he was
right.
in the last minute acquisition, obviously. And also Joel Embiid, whether or not he'll be healthy enough at 34 to return. But Anthony Davis talked about wanting to be a veteran on the team 2028 team and potentially being in a role kind of like what LeBron had this year. But I think it's interesting to look at that perspective. But the players that they have as almost locks to be back with the 2028 team, Bam Adebayo, he'll be 30 years old then. Paolo Banchero, who'll be just 25 years old. Devin Booker, who'll be 31 years old.
Yep.
Jalen Brunson, also 31 years old. Anthony Edwards, 26 years old. And Joel Embiid, who will be 34. Tyrese Halliburton, who'll be 28. And Chet Holmgren, who'll be 26. Tyrese Maxey, who'll be 27. Jason Tatum, who'll be 30. Jalen Williams, who'll be 27. And other contenders. So we're going to get into the under contenders after this. But Chris, what do you think about this original lineup that they constructed or that ESPN predicts for the 2028 team? I think it's decent, but I think we have to see, like we talked about this last college run, this NCAA draft, the NBA 2024 draft. It was not star-studded. It feels like without the names of KD, LeBron, and Steph, this lineup lacks a little bit of star power, even though they have some of the best players that could be in the league over the next 4 years.
Well, the thing that Team USA likes to do, Ethan, is they like to build a pipeline. And they like to reward guys for their commitment to Team USA. Are you going to play in the FIBA World Cup? If so, we're going to give you an opportunity potentially to play for the Olympic team. So, I look immediately at the finalists, the pool of players that they chose from for the Paris Olympics. I look immediately at guys with past Team USA experience, whether it's World Cup, Olympics, part of the select team, something like that. I think a sneaky one is Cooper Flagg. Obviously, he was part of the select team this time. I also understand that he's been in various Team USA type things. And if he becomes the player that everybody expects him to be, like he could be the next great American, the next hope for the great American, if you would. And so I think he's going to get strong consideration. But Anthony Edwards is a lock, I think, because he's going to be one of the best players you would think in the NBA at that time. And he's got multiple runs with Team USA. He was basically the leader of the FIBA World Cup team, and he had a big role on this Olympic team. So, like, anybody who is in the right age demographic from this gold medal team, I think not a lock, but certainly going to get a longer look than somebody who was not a member of the team. Bam is going to be the anchor. There aren't a lot of great centers in the Team USA pipeline, but they certainly want a specific kind of center. They want somebody with a little bit of beef, but also versatility to play multiple positions, to switch and stuff like that. So I think this list makes a lot of sense. I think you have Halliburton. He was a member of this gold medal team, even though he had a very, very small role. He collected a bunch of DNP CDs. Jalen Brunson, I think, is an interesting one. Is he big enough? Does he guard well enough on the defensive end of the floor? But you can certainly say that he is one of the best American basketball players in the NBA, and he'll still be in his prime. So I think this list that they put together at ESPN is very, very logical. I certainly think there are going to be interesting type curveballs that Team USA and Grant Hill is going to throw just based on roster construction, role delineation, and the style specifically of player that they're looking for FIBA. Like Drew Holiday was the kind of guy that fit so well from a FIBA standpoint. He was the defender. He was the guy who was going to battle both on the perimeter, but also switch and try and hold his own underneath. They're going to need somebody that can take on that kind of role. So I do think this is a very, very logical list to begin with. And I do think the holdover players from this gold medal team make a lot of sense. And but I think you pointed out like the star power is there, but it's not to the same level that it was for this gold medal team. And Team USA is probably, as we go into the future here, Ethan, Team USA is probably going to run into a situation where they're going to need the collective to be like a lot stronger. Um, because if Giannis is going to play for Greece, if Jokic is going to continue to play for Serbia, if Wemby is going to continue to play for France, we're talking about Team USA going into the 2028 Olympics without the best player in the tournament. And it's not going to be as easy to overcome that with all of the international talent, especially the international talent that we've already seen compete in Olympics and in World Cups and stuff like that.
Yeah, because I think we talked about it before this Olympics. I believe there was around 60 NBA players scattered around
Mm-hmm.
other countries' teams. Like, that is something that has never happened before. That
Yeah.
amount, that number of players, that high caliber that were being able to compete in the Olympics against these guys. Obviously, Victor Wembanyama was emotional not only after the semifinals win, but also in the loss to Team USA. And he was talking about afterwards that like he's gonna make them pay. He's gonna make them pay in the NBA and in FIBA, and you know that he loves his country. He's gonna rep his country, and he's gonna probably, if he has to, play in the Team USA thing or the French team's national team when it comes to FIBA as well. And that's just
Yeah.
going to be a precursor to what happens in the Olympics. But you also mentioned how having experience in FIBA could weigh their options for Team USA and who they select for the Olympics team. Obviously, Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley, and Jarrett Allen all have experience. Donovan Mitchell was a part of the 2019 FIBA Basketball World Cup. He played in 8 games, averaged 13.1 points per game, 4.3 rebounds, and 5 assists. Evan Mobley played in on the 2018 FIBA U17 Basketball World Cup
Mm-hmm.
and the 2019 FIBA U19 Basketball World Cup. He only played 2 games in 2019, but he played 7 games in 2018, averaging 9.3 points per game, 5.6 rebounds per game, and 1.4 assists per game. Jarrett Allen played in 2016 for the FIBA Americans U18 Championship for men. He played in 5 games. He averaged 10.6 points per game, 9 rebounds, and 1.4 assists per game. So you see that Jarrett Allen can get it done as well in the FIBA world, almost averaging a double-double for that experience. But let's get into some of the other contenders for this 2028 team and how they stack up compared with the guys from the Cavs as well. So from this
Well,
ESPN list, they
yeah.
listed Scotty Barnes, who will be 26, Jaylen Brown, who will be 31, Cade Cunningham, who will be 26. As you mentioned, Cooper Flagg, who'll be 21, De'Aaron Fox, he'll be 30, Brandon Miller will be 25, Donovan Mitchell, 31, Evan Mobley, 27, John Morant, 28, Trey Murphy III, 28, Jalen Suggs, 27, and Zion Williamson, 28. There's obviously some guys on this list who you like as you read them, as you see them, you're like, oh my goodness, if they were on this team alongside guys like Jason Tatum, alongside guys like Bam Adebayo, this would be a nasty, nasty team. But then you have to remember how the FIBA world works. There are some teams that have players that have been playing together for years,
Right.
years, and then you have to put them against these other guys. So, Chris, what do you think about the contenders on this list and how Donovan, Evan, and Jarrett kind of stack up with them when it comes to experience, but also ability to potentially be on this roster?
I mean, first of all, to enhance your point, Ethan, there's a distinct possibility that when we get to the LA games of 2028, that Giannis is better than the best player on Team USA. That Jokic is better than the best player on Team USA still. That Shai Gilgeous-Alexander for Team Canada is better than the best player for Team USA. That Wemby is better than the best player for Team USA. And that's just not a situation that Team USA has been in. Now you can sit there and you can say Embiid, but like, what if Embiid plays for Cameroon? What if he does? What if he says, I got my gold medal with Team USA. Now I want to represent my native Cameroon if they make it. I don't know if they're going to make it or not. But what if he does say that and he tries to play for them as opposed to Team USA? And, Embiid at 34, is he going to be a better American version than some of the other guys? Now, Ant could have that kind of rise where he becomes the best American player, or Paolo Banchero or something like that 4 years from now, and it's a little bit different. But I just think that's a fascinating situation that Team USA could be in as they move forward because of the departure of LeBron, KD, and Steph. To the conversation about the next wave of guys, Ethan, so much of this is about a role. And what do you do as a player that Team USA could need? You know what I'm saying? And if we're looking at a situation where Team USA is going to be anchored essentially by Anthony Edwards and Devin Booker because of all of their FIBA experience, whether in the World Cup or the Olympics, if that is going to be two captain type players, do you need Donovan Mitchell? Because you're trying to find guys that bring things that you need stylistically and from a positional standpoint and from a role standpoint. Like we talked about this on the previous podcast, part of the reason why Jason Tatum kind of got pushed further down the pecking order is because he was behind LeBron and KD. And this Team USA team, they didn't need the things that make Jason Tatum a great player for the Boston Celtics, right? So if you already have guys on the roster that do things very similar to another guy, are you going to use a roster spot on him, on a duplicate? So I think Donovan might have missed his window. And I think Donovan, in the eyes of Team USA, I think there's a distinct possibility, Ethan, that he has been surpassed by Anthony Edwards and Devin Booker. So now you start going down the list again. Scotty Barnes, I think, is going to be on the team. I think his versatility, I think his defense, I think his ability to connect offense and just do a bunch of different things. He's not just a scorer. He's not just a passer. He's not just a defender. He does a little bit of everything. And I think that's the kind of player that you need when you're talking about Olympic basketball. He also has a bunch of Team USA experience. That's going to help him as well. When it comes to Evan Mobley, are you taking Chet Holmgren or are you taking Evan Mobley? I think if you're talking about the center of the future for Team USA, that's the debate. Is it Chet? Is it Evan? Chet's done a lot with Team USA in the past. Gold medals and a bunch of different under whatevers. And, the thinking is he's only going to continue to get better, more physical, stronger. So I don't know that you're going to have both of those guys. I think if you're Team USA, you're looking at the pool of candidates and you say, do we take Chet? Do we take Evan? Because we can only have like one wiry type guy like that. You know what I mean? On the other side, we're going to look for a little bit more beef with our center. I think Jalen Suggs has a strong case because I think this upcoming Olympic team is going to need Drew Holiday, like Drew Holiday light, Derek White light, just a dude who's going to get into you, somebody who is going to get in the passing lanes, challenge at the rim, make some timely threes. You don't need him to be a great player necessarily. You just need him to fill a role. So I think that's something. It's not just take the best 12 players, the most accomplished 12, the most talented 12. You're trying to put a team together, right? And you're trying to find skill sets that are going to blend. You're going to try and find chemistry. You're going to try and find different guys to fill different roles. So I think Jarrett Allen is definitely interesting, but I don't think so. Um, I think if you're talking about the best chance for the Cavs, it's probably Evan Mobley, depending on how Team USA views the Chet Holmgren situation.
And Chris, obviously, this is all to say, like, there is 4 years in between the
Yeah,
decision being made.
right.
This is very, very early predictions of who might be on this roster.
Yeah,
Donovan Mitchell, if he plays to the MVP caliber that he did during partial of last season, his name could arise in that conversation more so than it is right now. Evan Mobley, if he takes a jump and potentially challenges Chet Holmgren,
right.
takes over as one of the better power forwards or centers, depending on what happens with the Cavs in the league, then that conversation is more of a battle between the two. Also, obviously, you look at Jarrett Allen, and we talked about the beefiness that you might want. Does Jarrett Allen put on a little bit more weight? How does he show himself against some of the best NBA centers this coming season, coming off of a broken ribs, pierced rib? Where are these
Mm,
guys going to be in 4 years from now when they're kind of in either in the middle or to the tail end of their primes? Obviously, Evan Mobley being more so toward the beginning of his prime. And I think it's very interesting, right? Because you all obviously you talked about the competition at the guard spots, which is obviously the most difficult position to figure out when it comes to Team USA because you have so many guys and you have so many valuable assets that have different roles, different skill sets, but all kind of similar to what each other do when it comes to getting to the basket, when it comes to scoring. Obviously, Devin Booker maybe has the best the highest opportunity to be, like you said, a captain of this team because of his scoring acumen from beyond the arc, from the mid range, being able to still get to the cup. Obviously, Anthony Edwards being a guy who's a little bit bigger, can play on both ends of the ball with some of the better point guards and shooting guards of opposing countries. But I just think this conversation, one, it's super early, and two, it's going to be interesting because Donovan Mitchell felt this year that he was a little bit snubbed from this
yeah.
team, and it's going to be something that he's going to have on his mind. I'm excited to ask him about it when we get the opportunity and what he thought about the games and just where he wants to be in 4 years, NBA and Team USA.
Well, the thing that Devin Booker has on his side, it's not so much that I think he's a better, more complete, more accomplished player than Donovan Mitchell at the NBA level. He's a two-time Olympian, and Team USA is going to reward those kinds of guys. The guys who have made the commitment, the guys who have made the sacrifice, the guys who have experience with USA basketball, the guys that have been on the Olympic stage and understand what it's going to be like. Devin Booker being a two-time Olympian compared to Donovan Mitchell, a zero-time Olympian, it's different. Anthony Edwards is a gold medalist. He is an Olympian. And I know based on my experience covering USA basketball that there is something to that. And obviously, Donovan Mitchell was in the pool of finalists. He wanted to be in Paris. he made that perfectly clear, but they just felt that Devin Booker and Anthony Edwards were better options. And it's hard to argue because they won the gold medal, and both those guys had key roles for the team that won the gold medal. So if you're thinking about 4 years down the road, what's going to change between now and 4 years from now? Anything could happen. There are various things that could happen. But between now and 4 years from now, what's going to change that's going to allow Donovan Mitchell to emerge over one of those two guys?
Nothing when it comes to medals. Like Devin Booker's a 2-time gold medalist, and then
Right.
Edwards one medalist, right? And those are things that they earned, things they got over opportunity that Donovan Mitchell doesn't have. And like you said, Chris, experience sometimes outweighs. And obviously, we know that with the Cavs when it comes to playoff experience. And it's a whole different world when it comes to Olympic experience, right? Stephen Curry was able to do that in his first Olympic appearance because he has experience in high pressure moments. He has experience taking high pressure shots and things of that nature. So obviously, a whole lot of experience goes a lot of ways, and potentially, if the Cavs make a deeper playoff run, maybe Donovan has a better chance because you get to showcase yourself in those high pressure situations against guys in the Western Conference if the Cavs make it to the NBA Finals. But
I mean, the other thing is, to your point about Steph, Team USA needed somebody like him. They needed an elite level shooter that, could attract defenders. Every time he ran around a screen, think about the chaos he caused. Think about the attention. Think about the LeBron James, Steph Curry pick and roll stuff that they were able to do. Think about the double teams that he was facing at various points and how that helped out his teammates. If you think about the construction of this past Team USA roster, they didn't really have elite level shooters. They had guys that could shoot, certainly, but Steph was clearly the best shooter in the Olympic Games. And they needed somebody like that to complete their roster. And, as good as Donovan Mitchell is as a 3-point shooter, he's not Steph. He's not to the level of Steph, right? So that's something else that Team USA may have to look for in this next wave as they put together their 2028 roster. Who is that 40 to 45% 3-point shooter, that elite level, high volume 3-point shooter that can play the Steph like role? Is there anybody in the USA pipeline that can do it that kind of way? Do they take a specialist like Trey Murphy III? Do they take another specialist who could emerge, at some point over the next 4 years as just that elite level shooter, the floor spacer, the guy who brings gravity, the guy who benefits greatly from the FIBA line being a little bit closer in the way that Steph did? Like, Steph always made so much sense for a Team USA roster that needed more shooting. Because as much as, Jason Tatum, great scorer, LeBron, great scorer, KD, great scorer, like you go on and on and on, but they just didn't have that elite level shooter. And if they didn't have Steph, they wouldn't have had it on the roster. So who is that guy that Team USA can look to maybe potentially fill that role? That's something that I'm going to be fascinated to see.
last thing that you mentioned was the LeBron James and Steph Curry pick and roll. And I remember watching some of their games and seeing that they had a play call. It might have been ran by Steve Kerr, it might have been ran by them too, that they called too small. And I was like, oh man, this is ridiculous. Y'all are just being mean and terrorizing these poor countries. But it was really great to see that. And Chris, I know you mentioned a specialist, a scorer. Got all the Cavs fans licking their chops, thinking about what Sam Merrill might be doing in 4 years from now, about what he might possibly
No.
bring when it comes to gravity, 3-point shooting, and all of those things. Licking their chops, trying to figure out if he might make the roster. But that's just a little
I
tease.
can't believe ESPN did not put him in the other contenders. What was ESPN thinking with that exclusion? My goodness.
That might be the biggest snub of them all, Chris. But that might just be a little tease to see what Sam Merrill might be doing this season, what he might do over the next 4 years, and if he's able to play at a high caliber level, especially when we talk about how much attention he's going to draw based on the season he had last year. But with all that being said, that'll wrap up today's episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But remember to become a Cavs insider and interact with Chris and me by subscribing to Subtext. Sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word STOP. It's easy, but we can tell you that the people who sign up stick around because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from me and Chris. This isn't just our podcast, it's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through Subtext. Y'all be safe. We out.